What? What are you looking at me for? Was there racing this weekend? I don't know. There's not really much to talk about this week. Well, except for a few things.
Green flag, green flag.
Hello, race fans, and welcome back to the Transatlantic transmission here on Team Motorsports. Now, you may notice that my voice has a slight gravelly husk to it. That's because I had a major sporting event of my own yesterday. Yes! I was at Wembley Stadium cheering this lot on as they won promotion to the third tier of English football. I know this will probably matter not a jot to many of you, but it was a good day. Well, some things happened. I think we need to talk about them. The biggest thing that happened being the Indy 500. But I think that's a pretty big thing. It was the 100th running of the Indy 500. That's an even bigger thing. And even bigger than all of that was Alexander Rossi who won it, in conclusive proof that this was a good weekend for underdog teams wearing blue and yellow. Don't ever tell me that fuel mileage races are boring ever again, because this was none of that. And let's be real here. This caps off what has been an incredible story this year for Alexander Rossi. This is a guy who broke into Formula 1 at last year for Manor Racing and actually outperformed his teammate Will Stevens in about most of the 7 Grand Prix that he got last year. He famously came close to scoring points at his home Grand Prix at Circuit of the Americas. And then he got dropped because presumably money and stuff. And that's why we have Rio Haryanto instead. So benefit to the sport there. And with that all in mind, he went to Brian Herter Autosport in IndyCar, who then had to merge with Andretti Autosport because of their own money issues. It just really was not going well. And then Rossi got vilified because how dare he just use IndyCar as a potential stepping stone back into Formula 1. So really, in a way, Sunday was one of the greatest babyface turns in motorsport history. And it caps off what was a pretty remarkable running of the 500. It was slightly surprising in that most of the favourites to win... Yeah, well, Rossi wasn't one of them for long stretches of the race. You had pole sitter James Hinchcliffe, who was up front constantly. Ryan Hunter-Reay was out there. The king of flat caps, Townsend Bell, was right in there. He was pulling some absolute... He was like a man possessed. He went 3 wide and then pretty much wrecked Sage Karam. I mean, it's debatable. Watch the incident for yourself. He was pulling some absolutely crazy moves, and he had one of the fastest cars all day, if not the fastest car overall all day. He was absolutely on fire. Until he got an unsafe release in the pits into Helio Castroneves. He then touched Castroneves' car, spun round, and took out Ryan Hunter-Reay's car as well. Long and the short of it, don't go 3 wide on pit road. It's dangerous enough on the track. Don't do it in the pits. Doesn't work. So that kind of eliminated both of them. But you still had a massive contenders in the race. Castroneves was there. He had a problem with one of his rear wheel guards near the end of the race. That kind of took him out of the running. But Hinch was still there. Joseph Newgarden was up front for long stretches. And Carlos Munoz came to the front and was really fiercely in contention at the end. Basically how the final 2 laps played out. Or the final 10 laps, I should say. And it was quite funny because I've just reviewed the 2007 Coca-Cola 600 on the Classic Race Club this past week, and the finish of the race was very similar to that. You had a lot of guys, all the top guys, like, are they going to try and stay out? Are they going to try and make it? Can they make it? And one by one, it was like, nope. Tony Kanaan, nope. Joseph Newgarden, nope. Munoz, nope. And at one point, it looked like Pippa Mann would be the one who would try and make it the whole distance, but no, she had to pit as well. And we're all looking at each other going, surely someone's got to go for it. Someone has got to go for it. And Rossi did. Literally, this thing was spluttering and choking and running on fumes with 2 laps to go. It beetled across the start-finish line. And the moment he didn't turn left onto pit road was the moment we all had our hearts in our mouths. It was like, okay, this is it. It's happening now. And according to reports of the track, his engine cut out in turn 1, reignited in turn 2. His average final lap was basically the equivalent of a mobility scooter. It was just beetling around. Munoz was tearing after him on full speed. And I can't imagine how tense and how nervous that must have been for Rossi to make it round. But he did. What more can you say? What a story. What a story. And I think what's interesting now is the question of what does he do next? What does he do in his career next? Because obviously the goal all along, and something that he'd been kind of vilified for, was for wanting to go back to Formula 1. But, I mean, now what does he do? Does he stay in IndyCar, where he's guaranteed to almost be a top star? I mean, he's an Indy 500 winner. That never goes away. It doesn't matter. He's there. It's like Trevor Bayne. It doesn't matter what he does now in his NASCAR career. You can say he's been below par or whatever. Doesn't matter. He's a Daytona 500 winner. He's always going to be up there in that pantheon. So Rossi is going to have seats available now. He's going to have chances in IndyCar now. Does he stay and make a living there? Or does he try and go back to F1 with improved cachet? If he does, he's still got a tie with Manor. He's still their reserve driver. Does he go back with them? Or does he angle for a higher seat? Who knows? Either way, apparently he's getting a check for $2.5 million out of this victory. So if he can just be like, hey, Manor, yeah, you know, the whole check thing. You know, Harry Anto's funding you well. I heard he might be out of money by August. Well, you know, I just came into £2.5 million. So, you know, if you feel it, man. It could happen. Who knows? Motorsport is a crazy place sometimes. And this Indy 500 was fittingly crazy for the 100th running. And it was really enjoyable overall. As you could see in the video, we really enjoyed the race. It was very competitive. It was very entertaining. There was, you know, the cast of winners kind of rotated constantly throughout the race. You could never really tell who was potentially on to win the thing, you know. Some of the guys who weren't in contention to win included Juan Pablo Montoya, who was the first guy out of the race. He crashed in turn 2 quite early on. It shows you how tough IndyCar racing is when the reigning champion of the race spins out on his own. These cars are on a knife edge, and one was one of the first ones out. Sage Karam, as I said, also wrecked out in a very... Well, it was close. Basically, he and Townsend Bell went sort of Hakkinen and Schumacher round. There's like a car in the middle. They went round and then came in. Karam was just further ahead going into turn 1, but he was on the outside, and Townsend Bell went, well, I've got the inside line. I'm prepared to stick here. Basically, one of them should have backed down. You can dispute who it should have been. They kind of probably shouldn't have gone into turn 1 side by side, and it was Karam who lost out in the end, but... real shame, because he had a solid run up until then. He was moving up, and anyone who listens to Motorsport 101, we all wanted him to do well for this one, and we hope to see Sage back in IndyCar very, very soon, because he really deserves it. Other guys who also had trouble included the Doom-mobile. That's where my deep voice is, isn't it? The Doom-mobile of Mikhail Alushin. And it kind of falls down there. But yeah, but one of the coolest looking cars in the entire field also hit trouble. That wrapped up Connor Daly as well, which was disappointing for Danny Brennan. And, well, other people as well who all wanted to see him do well. But in the end, it belongs to Alex Rossi. And you just can't say any more than that. Just, I tell you what, if Sarah Connors has a better day in her entire life, I don't know what it would entail. Because basically, a friend of mine on Twitter, Sarah Connors, follow her now, she's great. She was at the 500. She had a flag, an American flag, done up for Alexander Rossi. And then not only did he retweet it and mention it before the race, he invited her into Victory Lane for a selfie in Victory Lane. Like, shut it down. It ain't getting better than that. The internet has been won for the day. And it was just incredible. What a great race. What a great Indy 500. It was good fun. Then the Coca-Cola 600. Now, this was a little bit of the odd one out in the end. This was a bit of a shame because we'd had a pretty good Monaco Grand Prix. The Indy 500 was electric. It was great stuff. And then the Coca-Cola 600, which through no fault of its own did kind of end up being the odd one out. And it's a shame. We've had some great racing this year. But really, the racing was still fine. It was a good race, but just... not really a huge amount happened. It just kind of happened. It just sort of came and went. I'll be honest, I faded after about 3/4 distance. I'd been up, me and Ryan King have been doing the stream since, for 12 hours at that point. We just had to fade. And in the end, I don't like blaming a dominant winner on why a race is boring, because that's never the point. And in the end, I think you should congratulate the eventual winner of the race, which was Martin Truex Jr. Boy, has that guy deserved to win for a while now. And this kind of... the way he won this race was basically how Alain Menu finally won his first British Touring Car Championship in 1997. He'd come runner-up so many times in the previous years, and then he absolutely crushed the championship in 1997. And far from everyone going, oh, it's really boring, he's a dominant champion, everyone was just like, well, considering how many times he came close before, do you know what? We'll give you this one. And to say Martin Truex Jr. laid the beat down on this race is an understatement. It's the longest race of the year. It's 400 laps. It's 600 miles. Martin Truex Jr. led 392 out of 400 laps. He led 588 of the 600 miles. He led an entire 500-mile race and then 88 more. What? We haven't seen a beatdown on a NASCAR race like this since Jeff Burton in New Hampshire 2000. And that was only 300 laps. He led the whole race, but that was only 300 laps, 300 miles. Not nearly 600. Like, seriously, this was a devastation. Like, no one could really get near. Jimmy Johnson tried, and you were like, oh, he's going to reel it. Nope. And it was just like Martin Truex Jr. had a force field around him the whole time. It was like, whenever someone got within 2 seconds of it, it was like, oh, my car's starting to get tight. Oh, I can't chase him down. So, but what a win. I know it was heavily emotional for those guys, and Truex Jr. and his family and his partner and everything. That was a great story in itself. It couldn't have happened to a nicer guy. A nicer guy could not have chosen to dominate this race more. It was great stuff. But the question does remain to be asked about it, especially when the TV rating came out and it was down a good half a point. And really, this year, the TV ratings for NASCAR have been down across the board, which is a little bit strange. And people will say that the rating system is not great. You know, the Nielsen rating system is not great. It's not flawless. Of course it's not. There's probably other factors or everything. But at the same time, the question does have to be asked, why are the TV ratings down? And particularly, people are confused because the racing overall has been the best it's been consistently in about 10 years. Like, I mean, Charlotte, as a race, you know, with things happening in it, not a huge amount happened. But the racing was still solid. It was still good. And we had announcements this week that we're going to have new, even more lower downforce and lower side force aero packages trialed at Kentucky and Michigan. So NASCAR are obviously right on the low downforce hype train. Took them long enough, but I'm glad they're on it now. So the racing's been great. Why are the ratings still going down? And I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. And on Twitter and everywhere else on social media. My theories are this. Last year was... the racing quality overall was very poor. It was very, very poor. It had been for a little while, but last year, oh, dearie me, it was a stinker. So, bad racing quality last year. Controversies up the arse. We had the Talladega finish shenanigans where Kevin Harvick, maybe he intentionally wrecked to prevent the race finishing and all that. Oh, God, it makes my brain hurt just thinking about it again. And then, obviously, we had the Kenseth Logano stuff, which, you know, ultimately, Kenseth probably had a right to do what he did in the revenge. But overall, it just made the sport look bad. I got fed up trying to defend NASCAR to people who were saying it's a thug sport and everything. I was like, it just does not look good. This really doesn't look good. And you had fans in the sport. I remember Jeff Gluck posted an open letter from a fan. I follow him on Twitter. I think he's called Matt Gross. I'll post a link to it in the description, actually, if you want. And he explained how he just felt like the whole Kenseth Logano thing's making him feel like not a part of the sport anymore. Like, he was there for the racing, and yet it felt like the racing had kind of gone away and was more about the big kind of controversial, exciting moments. Do you know what I mean? And it was weird. And I, you know, couple that with the feeling that in the last years, NASCAR have kind of started to make the rules up as they go along. You know, like, we were grateful they tested low downforce and the different aero packages mid-race, but kind of out of nowhere in mid-season kind of feels a bit weird to some people. You've also got the caution clock coming out of nowhere in the trucks. That might come in. The chase format literally almost changing year on year. And then these different scenarios coming up, like Tony Stewart this year saying, oh, I'm going to start the Talladega race, but then Ty Dillon, was it, would replace me. And then NASCAR going, oh, yeah, well, if Ty Dillon wins the race, it's still going to be credited to Tony Stewart, and he's still going to get in the chase as a result. And everyone was going, what's going to stop people doing, putting a ringer in for a road course race? Oh, we'll decide when we get there. We'll probably say no at the time. Well, what's the... it's our rules. Our playground, our rules. You know, it's that sort of mentality. And let's talk about it for a minute. Like, within the context of the chase format as it is, Kyle Busch winning all those races last year and making it to the chase, getting into the top 30 in points, and then winning the championship was amazing. Let's not degenerate that at all. I had no problem with that in the context of the rules that were set up. But overall, the headline from last season read, man who misses almost a third of the season wins the championship. And I think for a lot of fans that it was a case of, wait, how have we got here? How have we ended up in this situation? I'm done. And I think, to be honest with you, it's a combination of a lot of little factors that are starting to build up that have presumably made a lot of people feel like they're just not in with the sport anymore. They're just not down with it. And I'll be honest with you, I had one of those moments over the off-season. I was seriously considering, not coming back to NASCAR this year. I did because I was like, well, hopefully low downforce will make the racing good, which it has. The racing is great, but I feel the problem at the moment is that fans feel like they've got to dive through so many layers of BS. You know, politics, stuff over there, the PR nightmare with Brian Franson appearing to give NASCAR the official endorsement of Donald Trump. Oh, God, that was a PR nightmare. The caution clock and we need to make a new rule to fix a problem with a previous rule with the chase and you just got to wade through so much nonsense on the outside just to enjoy the races as actual racing. And I think that's become the big issue. So, as I say, that's my thought. That is my thought, and I don't want to be negative on NASCAR because, as I say, the pure racing this year has been brilliant. I've not enjoyed the actual racing product in NASCAR this much since the mid-2000s. Honestly, that consistently, it's been great. We've literally had, 3 mediocre races this year. One was Texas, which pretty much he always is. Charlotte was okay, but as I say, just nothing really much happened. You get races like that, that's fine. But, you know, otherwise, they've been corkers. We've had some greats. We've had some classics. You know, it's been superb. So there's got to be more to it than that as to why people are seemingly turning away from NASCAR. So I'd love to hear your thoughts down below. And finally, can we just give Kyle Larson a hug? I mean, dude, like, seriously. If you didn't catch the Xfinity Series, he finished 13th at the 600. But the big story was how somehow another win for him got away. This time he was in the Xfinity Series. A week after he'd come so close to beating Joey Logano at the All-Star race. And then that sort of flopped and he ended up finishing 16th after a late puncher. The Xfinity Series race happened. He was leading Joey Logano again. And then there was a caution literally with 2 laps to go when I think it was Eric Jones cut a tyre down and banged the wall. And he and Logano stayed out. Everyone behind them pitted for at least some tyres. Denny Hamlin took 4 and restarted 5th. He storms to the front within a lap. And then Logano's trying to fight him off. Larson literally comes charging up the backstraight on the final lap like, no! I will beat you! And then going into the final corner, he and then just sort of soars up the track and hits the wall, and he finishes like 6th or something. And Denny Hamlin wins. And you just, like, he actually said in the post-race interview, he was like, I feel really bad, but I'm kind of getting used to it now. And I was like, oh, no. Oh, I feel bad. I love Kyle Larson. He's one of my favorite drivers in the current field. I love him to bits. He's fantastic. And he had people like Mark Martin endorsing him after the race. He's just a superb driver. He's balls to the wall. He's spectacular to watch. Man, he needs to close one out soon. He needs to. Like, and the big issue was so many people were saying, oh, you know, once again, Kyle Larson's not prepared to lay the bump into someone. I'm sorry, watch the replay of him going into turn 3 for the final time again. He tries to get to Denny Hamlin. He, like, barrels it in there on knackered 40, 50-plus lap tyres. And you could just see the car. He's like he goes, and he, like, gets right up to the bumper and then just goes. So he tried. Like, believe me, I think he tried there. Like, the Sprint Showdown proved that I think Larson is done, like, not laying the bumper to people or not doing what needs to be done. Like, he pretty much turned right into Chase Elliott and they banged wheels all the way to the finish line. Like, there was no way he was not doing that. So, oh, man, I just feel for him. He's been on a real tear. Him and Chad Johnston have really come together this year. I think a lot of people were a little bit skeptical about that crew chief combo. But they've come together. The performances have really picked up the last few weeks. I just feel like the moment he gets that first Sprint Cup win, it'll start to snowball. At the moment, he reminds me a lot of Shane Van Gisbergen. When Shane Van Gisbergen first broke on the scene in V8 supercars, he was very similar. He was the young talent, he was the superstar, he was flamboyant, he was outrageous, spectacular to watch, or whatever. But there was a time, you know, remember 2010, the famous finish of the Gold Coast 600 where he's right there on Jamie Whincup, but he couldn't get the job done. And there were question marks. It was like, well, how many more years is he going to be the coming guy in V8 Supercars before he finally gets one? 2011, he wins 2 races and things start to snowball. And then a couple of years later, switches teams and he, you know, it's been pretty good ever since. He's been a consistent race winner. He's been a title contender ever since. I feel like Kyle Larson will go a similar way. And considering how you win one race and you're in the chase, a win right now for Kyle Larson will be great for him in so many ways. I just don't want him... Kyle, you're probably not watching this, but if you are, don't keep your head up. Don't drop down. Don't compromise what you're all about. Keep doing what you're doing. You will have learned a lot from the last few weeks. And your time's coming. Like, seriously, it's coming soon. It has to be. He is basically the new Casey Kane in 2004. Poor old Casey Kane spent his entire rookie season in 04 nearly winning races and having them snatched out from underneath his nose. Like, the worst one was at Dover, where he was leading and then somebody blew an engine and leaked oil on the track and he hit the patch and just went straight into the turn 3 wall and that was it all over. Out of the lead, out of the race. And it was absolute heartbreak. And I think it took him until 2005 and I think he finally won his first race at Richmond. And then ever since then, he's had the pretty solid career that he has done. So I think Kyle Larson will be in the same boat. So that just about concludes, excuse me, Transatlantic Transmissions. And that pretty much concludes the remnants of my voice. I'm now going to have this cup of tea. It's very nice. And thank you all so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts on what we have talked about on today's Transatlantic Transmission down there in the comments below. If you're new around here, there's a big red button down there that says subscribe. Hit that immediately. And I'll see you soon.